It's just crazy how I never thought I'd be in a place to say, no matter what happens, I know I'll be okay because I trust myself and I'm confident in who I am. And that's just, oh, that's wild. I love that I've come that far to be able to say that.
Welcome to the Whole You podcast. I'm Shannon O'Brien. Today we are talking to one of my favorite people on the planet, Miss Callie Griffin. Callie, as some of you know, is the Director of Client Success at Whole You, and she started out as a client actually, which makes her perfectly suited for her role. And I wanted to interview her or ask her a couple of questions about her journey, her evolution, before, during, and after her time as a Whole You client, and then even in her role now and her plans for the future. So I'd love all of you to help me in welcoming Miss Callie Griffin. Hi, Callie.
Oh, hello. How are you?
Doing good. Happy Wednesday.
Yeah, happy Wednesday. I'm here in Columbus, Ohio. It's currently raining and I absolutely love the rain. So I'm feeling good.
Very nice. Well, let's circle back and actually I'll tell this story. I'll start by telling the story. I was driving to an event at Babson College. I was an intern and I were going to set up for a career fair at Babson College, and I got a phone call from your mother. Who,
Really?
yeah, this is like way back, and she was. I think this is how it happened. We were talking, and she was saying, "Yeah, I'm looking for some, guidance, some help for my daughter. Just wondering if this could be a fit." So she asked me some questions about Whole You, and I'll always remember talking to her, and then months later getting to meet you in person. But let's hear about from your perspective, like how did it go that you were connected with Whole You and me and working with me, working together?
Yeah, wait, that's so funny. So I had no idea that you were on the way to a Babson event because we did that same event years later when I started working for you. So that's so funny how it kind of came full circle. But so yeah, my mom, she didn't even tell me she was reaching out to you. She knew I was struggling and she knew that I was pretty lost after I moved to Boston from LA. I'd been working out in film out there and that's what I studied in college. But she realized that when I was in Boston, I tried to do a couple of temp jobs and nothing was sticking. And it just didn't feel like I knew the right path for myself. So it was definitely a hard time. But I'd been talking to her about it and she reached out to me and she goes, I met this woman, I spoke to her and I go, okay, you've been calling people? What is happening? Like, what? Like, I don't understand. So she told me about you and I think I did some research. I don't know. At that time, I was just very unmotivated. So I would not be surprised if I did absolutely no research. And I just kind of said, yeah, I'll talk to her, like, whatever, it's cool. So I remember when we first talked, I just felt very calm. I was not the best at speaking to professionals in general. I always felt nervous or I always felt like I wasn't qualified to speak to someone who was very like I even had problems calling my dentist to make an appointment. I'd be nervous for some reason. So it was nice to feel kind of calm when I first spoke to you. And yeah, I think the holidays were coming up. So we had some time to, I had some time to focus on my family. And then we made plans to reconnect in January. And that's when I started your full program. So yeah, but that time my mom really led the charge to get me, the help that I needed, which was great because I just didn't want to do it, I guess, for myself. So
It's really interesting that you said you were unmotivated. I think the word unmotivated is one of the last words I would ever think to associate with you. So I think that really shows your evolution to think that you might have been unmotivated at a time or at a time. And now thinking of you, you're so motivated, a go-getter, making things happen for yourself in a very real way. So I want to get into, how you went from maybe being unmotivated, not really into it, to the point where your mom's like, oh, maybe I should call a couple people and see if I can find someone to assist with this transition. But maybe we could jump into, well, you had mentioned that you were working and living in Los Angeles. Do you want to go into a little bit more detail about what you thought your life's work was, and
Hmm.
how you determined that that was not quite a fit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really starts back to it starts when I was a kid because I'd always been a notorious people pleaser to my friends, to my family. I just felt like I was always worried about how everyone else was feeling. And it really, it caused me a lot of issues growing up. Everyone always said, oh, I was so nice and caring, but they didn't realize that I needed that approval to feel good about myself, because I couldn't find that thing within myself to really be confident in, which, it's sad to think about that, but it's good. It's good to compare, where
Hmm.
you were to where you are now. And because of that, going throughout college and taking different classes, I just couldn't really figure out what was right for me because again, I was just focused on other people. I was focused on my friends, my social life, everything pretty much going on around me, but I didn't take that time to reflect inward and really figure out what was best for me. So I ended up just declaring a major very randomly, saying, okay, I like movies. Let's just go with that. And I minored in creative writing because people tell me I'm a good writer. Again, it's just kind of, there's not really that passion there. It's more of I felt like I had to do something. So I went for it, which, in retrospect, it turned out to be a great thing because it led me to kind of this whole journey and where I am now. But so I graduated from Elon University with my major was cinema and television and my minor was creative writing. And after that, it just felt like the next best step was to be in the film hub of the US, which is Los Angeles. I had a lot of friends going out there and it just felt like the next logical step for me. And when I was living out there, I had such a great time. It was really fun. I met a lot of people. I worked in the heart of Hollywood, surrounded by all of these go-getters. Like you were saying earlier, you consider me a go-getter, but I considered pretty much everyone else a go-getter. And I was an observer, it felt like. But
There's a
I worked,
spectrum of go-getters, right? So
yeah,
Los Angeles is kind of like you said, the hub of go-getters.
yeah, just nonstop. It's, you see the good and the bad side to that though. And I think that a lot of people are familiar with kind of the good parts of LA and then how it's not so good in the entertainment industry. There are definitely there's it's chaotic, but some people like that chaos and it feels like something to overcome rather than something to sink from. And I just felt myself sinking over the last few months I was there. I was really only there for 8 months, but I I looked around. I remember I woke up one day before work and I think it was 8 months into my job. And I just looked around and I like had this panic moment of, oh my God, I don't think this is the right place for me. I don't think this is the right industry for me. I don't think I'm with my people, with the people who I always envision myself being surrounded by. This is just not it. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a pretty terrifying moment. And
Because you felt trapped.
yeah,
You felt like
I
this
just felt
lifestyle
trapped.
that you're trapped in.
Yeah. Actually, I'm wondering, do you feel, have you ever kind of felt that where you're looking around, and you go, okay, this is not it for me. Like, have you felt that, or can you remember a time where you kind of, that you had that kind of moment of panic?
Me personally?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I loved many elements of the jobs that I was in previous to starting Whole You. But like you said, these are not the people. This is not the boss. This is not the environment that's really making me thrive. So I can totally imagine you in that circumstance getting into it and kind of going with emotions, but then waking up one day and saying, and having that feeling inside and saying, this is just not it, but I don't know what is. I think that that's part of the scary part. It's like, okay, this isn't it, but what is? Because I've been going down this one path.
Mm.
And so now what? You either stay on this or you jump into uncertainty. So maybe talk a bit about what next. How do you get out of that when you feel trapped? Because I think many people go through this and they just say, I'm going to stay here because it's comfortable, or because it's what I know, and I think maybe it will get better. They're hoping it might get better.
Totally.
But so what do you do after that when you realize it's not the right fit?
Yeah, I think a quote that really drove me forward at the time was, you have to know what you don't want rather than what you do want. You know what I mean? It's more important to discover what's not best for you. That's something I really held on to because, again, there are those two parts. I don't know what I want moving forward, and I know it's not what I'm doing now. So I think I just, well, first of all, so I got pretty sad when I realized this, and I stuck out my job for another few months, but I was open and honest and said, look, I don't think this city is the right place for me. I don't think this job is the right place for me. And it's different when you want to relocate entirely. I feel like people are just naturally more understanding if you want to move cities, which
Mhm.
is, that's kind of a shame that it feels like you can only get that respect quitting a job earlier than people want you to, just because you're moving. Like if I wasn't moving and I quit that job, I probably would have been treated very differently, you know?
Yeah, well, we've touched on this too when you are in a social setting and you want to leave the party, because you're just not having fun. And people go,
Yeah.
wait a second, but we're having fun. What's wrong with you? Ultimately, what's wrong with us? So I think that that's a way to say, this city's not quite for me. It's not rejecting them or what they're doing. It's just saying something that, is more understandable for them. So you don't
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
reject anyone or make people feel uncomfortable about their choices. So that seemed like the right thing to do, just say that the city wasn't a fit. So then were you
Yeah.
city hopping? Did you consider other cities, or it was just location
Well,
based?
well, after I quit my job, that's when I took my first trip out to Japan, which I'm sure we'll touch on a little bit later. But I went out for 2 weeks in, I think it was January of 2018. And I visited my best friend who was teaching English there at the time. And I just needed a change of scenery. I just wanted, she offered to host me. And I'd always been interested in Japan. I didn't really know too much about it, but Japanese culture always seemed really interesting to me. So I just wanted to check it out. And while I was there, I just really fell in love and I just loved everything about it. It was such a great, refreshing kind of it felt like a restart for me and or reset. And so when I came back to the States, I proceeded to pretty much stay in bed for like 3 months because I was just sitting there wallowing and saying, oh my God, I have no direction. I am trapped. I'm in this city. I have no job. I don't know what to do. And I think what really helped was talking to friends who were in a similar position, talking to friends who say, I don't like where I live either, or, this job isn't what I thought it would be right after college. And I think I started just being more open about it, and more people who were living all over the place just agreed with how I was feeling and said they felt the same way. And one of my friends who felt that way, she and I ended up just deciding to move together, move anywhere. And
Hmm.
we picked Boston for absolutely no reason other than it seems cool. So
Wow, that's really brave.
yeah, I mean, I'd only been once before for about 2 days, and she had been, I think, once before as well. We knew a couple people there, but yeah, we just wanted something new and fresh. It seemed like a fun thing to do. So that's why we came to Boston.
Well, it was a serendipity, right? Because then we got to meet. You being in Boston. I think that's probably how your mother found me, because in her Google search or whatever, it was probably the Yelp that came up, Yelp in Boston or career coach Boston. I don't even know what she Googled, but
Mhm.
she found me, we spoke, and then you and I started not too long after. I think you came back from Japan and were kind of settling into Boston.
Yeah.
And so when we started to work together, you were actually one of the last clients that I actually met in person. As you know, I've kind of transitioned my work to working online and working virtually, which during the pandemic, I mean, everybody's doing that, but I was a couple years early in deciding that I wanted to just work virtually. But you and I got to meet in person and work together in person, which was great.
Yeah.
And
It
and
was.
so, as you know, one of the main things that we start out talking about is, okay, well, what are your values? What are your top 5 values? We look at a whole list of about 50 values, whittle them down to 10, then whittle them down to 5 to say, Well, is the work that you're doing, are the choices that you're making in line with who you really are, what you really value in life? And those can shift over time. And I think maybe even the values that you had at the time are different than those that you have now. But maybe let's focus on the present, because, or you can focus on whatever you want, like what your
Yeah.
values were then, how they shifted. But what were your realizations about that exercise of how your values play into your choices when it comes to career and to life?
Yeah, sure. I mean, really quickly before I get into that, I was looking at an old journal that I was writing at the time before we started working together. And I'm not kidding you. I read an excerpt and it was me very, I'm very lost, don't know what I'm doing. And it said, hopefully Shannon will be my saving grace. I kid you not. I wrote that in my journal like 2 months before we started working together. And
Wow.
I read that. I think it was last night. I was talking to my friend and kind of telling her about all of these different things I was writing in my journal and I at the time. And yeah, that really just it blew my mind.
Wow.
Because
That's
you were my saving grace. That's really how I feel. So
Arigato gozaimasu. And
yeah.
actually, I find like when I work with clients, they're kind of mine as well. It's a reciprocal mutual feeling is that we learn from each other, and that's certainly been the case with you, having to become like closer friends as we've gone on, even past you completing the program. But that's obviously incredibly flattering and humbling to be a saving grace. A lot of pressure to be
No,
my
no,
saving grace, but yeah, no,
no pressure.
it's a co-created process, and I think there are no gurus, or there are no people that are going to come and save you, right? It's like really you saving yourself, of
Right.
course, like you taking that motivation, you taking that initiative and commitment to participate, and it's usually with somebody else that we learn from others, and they can hold a mirror to us, and we can learn and grow through our work with other people, and it's ultimately coming from you. But there is that synergy that I would like to think that whole you brings to it, that we're
Yeah.
working together and created that evolution. So thanks for sharing that with me. That's so sweet.
Yeah, of course. And like what you just said, that's the perspective change I needed because as I wrote, hopefully Shannon will save me. It wasn't, but in your program, like you just said, it's about us saving ourselves and making those decisions for ourselves. And I was just completely, I felt like I kept hoping to find it everywhere else, hoping to find my happiness, hoping to find my passions. I was just looking everywhere else except for within myself. So that's why the values exercise, the first exercise of your program, really stood out to me because when I was looking through the list of values, I go, this is it's so simple, but I've legit never thought about this before. I couldn't believe that I hadn't even chosen any specific values to define myself with. And I'm sitting there, I think I was 23 years old, and it just made me feel, I think it just immediately hooked me. I was like, this is so interesting. I can't believe I've never thought about this before. Because it's a simple but difficult exercise because you're trying to narrow down, the top 5 values out of this list. And I felt
Mhm.
like I was doing it wrong at first, or if I picked one value and then I didn't pick the other, then the program wouldn't go well for me. So, but I think once I got out of my head and I just chose what felt right, that's really what jump started my kind of my look inward for the first time in my life. And that's what I really loved about that exercise. And the values, I have my values now. We recently did this together, but I have it as autonomy, health, helping others, relationships, and adventure. And they definitely were different when I first started the program, but each one, really means a lot to me and how I've progressed throughout the years and what's important to me and what I want to focus on. So you can't go, it's an exercise where you just can't go wrong. You just pick what's important to you at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the autonomy makes so much sense, because even at the start of our conversation, you're saying from a young age, I was always looking outside for answers, someone else to save me, someone else to tell me what's okay, someone else to give me permission. But the autonomy is like, no, I actually know what's best for me.
Yeah.
And sure, I can listen to other people, I can read books, I can listen to podcasts, I can get information and data from outside, but process that and have autonomy to say yes or no, this is for me. And like you said, this exercise of looking at your values, and all of the exercises that I present or suggest are super simple. And I think I emphasize that a lot because this process, it's a complicated process for us because, watching our mind and the way that it reacts. Oh no, if I pick this answer, it's gonna not let me, it's gonna, bring me over here. We watch ourselves get anxious about things rather than go with the flow and trust. I pick this because I pick it, and it's the right thing because I pick it. And
Mm,
so it's almost, these are super simple, but then we're able to watch how we respond to each of the exercises. So I
yeah.
find these very simple exercises are applicable throughout your life, right? Years ago, today, in the future, if you want to revisit it, just to check in with yourself and say, okay, what's important to me now? So
It's almost like you're building trust. It's teaching you how to build trust within yourself, to trust yourself and your decisions. And autonomy, really goes hand in hand with that, because I just always felt like I needed other people's permission before I did anything. I feel like at the time when you're graduated from college and you see all of these people doing all these different things, and some people start to say, oh, if you're not working at a 9 to 5 at a corporate office, like, then you're lazy. Or, oh, this girl, she became a photographer after college, like, that's so bizarre. I felt like I was surrounded by all this negativity about what other people are doing, so it made me terrified to think outside the box, because it felt like I had to work in a specific way to fit in with what everyone else was doing. And that was the biggest mistake, because I always, yeah, like you said, like I figured it out within myself because I've always had it there, but it's just the fear that was holding me back. And that's kind of what you broke me out of when I was moving forward with the program.
fear is always there. Fear is always there for everybody, and we can't always identify it or admit to it or want to admit to it. We're scared to admit that fear is there. But it it
We're
is a
fearful of our own fear.
our own fear. Fear is the constant, but to recognize it, to embrace it, and get beyond it, right, and transition it into an excitement, or overcome it. So values, we're talking about this values exercise. How do you feel like your concept of your career and what you wanted to do, how has that shifted as you become a little bit more aware of what your own values are? Do you feel like there's been some revelation? That's a heavy word, but knowing your values, knowing who you are, can you determine what you feel like your life's work is at this point?
Mm, yeah, yeah, absolutely. I just, I think that, again, it was always here. It was always within myself, but going through the process and connecting the dots to my personal beliefs and my wants to my professional career, that's really, that's the process that helped me understand that all of my life, I've always been the person that my friends would go to for advice or for help, or if anyone was going through something dark, and people just felt like they could open up to me. And I always made it a point to make my friends feel that they had a safe space with me, or that they could open up to me and, just say whatever they wanted. And I wouldn't judge them at all. And I've never felt the need to judge anyone, because I don't know, that I don't compare myself to other people anymore. And I think especially now, I don't see the point at all in judging someone else for their actions. We're all human. We're all going to make mistakes. If someone tells me something that, oh, I'm going through this, I 10 out of 10, I've probably gone through the same thing in my past, or I've probably been there before. So it's nice to use my own past negative issues or anything negative that happened in my life to help people and help my friends that I talk to, help them through their current negativity. If they're, I always say to my parents, I learned a lot when I was younger, and I'm pretty sure that is because that's what's driving me forward in my professional career. It kind of all makes sense now. So just
Mhm.
helping others is really something that's always been important to me. And that's transformed into pursuing a master's in psychology and wanting to, maybe career, like I'm working with you now in career coaching, and I love seeing what you do. I just always thought that maybe like counseling or college counseling would be a good fit. So it's, yeah, I definitely see it and I'm getting there, but I'm not afraid of the specifics yet. I'm just kind of accomplishing what I need to accomplish now with my master's and working with you and with Japan, which we can talk about. I'm moving to Japan in a few months to teach English. So it's just all of these things I want to accomplish for myself. They're leading somewhere, and I know I have an idea of where it's leading, but I'm not afraid of the specifics and the exact position that I'll be having, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. And I think that's what people get hung up about. They're like, but why? Why am I making these choices? Why am I making these choices and I'm not knowing where they're leading? And the way you're describing it is, you mentioned your love, like falling in love with Japan, and that was always like itching in the back of your mind that you wanted to go there. And then you just pursued it. And I'll never forget the day you told me, like, look, I can't get this out of my mind. I really want to move there. There's this opportunity, there's this program to go teach there. And I was just so proud of you for pursuing that and deciding that you were going to move there. And I'm also proud and love that you're saying, look, I'm doing these things because I love to do them and I'm good at them, but they're not necessarily making total sense and painting this really clear picture. But I'm trusting my instincts, I'm trusting my gut that they're the right choice now. And that's always the question of journey and destination, or process, that it's all process, it's all journey, and you're just enjoying the journey and doing what feels right. So you're moving to Japan, you're pursuing a master's, you're almost finished with your thesis work. Do you want to touch on that a little bit? Because it's kind of related to Japan in a way.
Yeah, sure. It's before I say anything about that, it's just crazy how I never thought I'd be in a place to say, no matter what happens, I know I'll be okay because I trust myself and I'm confident in who I am. And that's just, oh, that's wild. I love that I've come that far to be able to say that. It's not easy for a lot of people to say. And I think for me, I struggled for so many years about my own confidence and my own self-worth. And I just, it's wild. It's wild to be able to feel that I can take these risks now with confidence and with kind of this energetic spirit. And if Japan, if I move out there and I realize I made a mistake, I'll come back. I'm not afraid of what's going to happen. I'm just excited that I'm making these decisions for myself.
Yay, exciting. And you touched on the word well-being. I know that that's something that's of interest to you and drew you to the work with Whole You as well, that the two missions are obviously pursuing your life's work, which we talked about, transitioning from film for you into more of a role of counseling and coaching. And so pursuing your life's work, but also living a balanced, purposeful life, and that they can't be, that they're inextricably linked, and that in order to be successful in one, you really have to have the other.
Hmm.
And so I know you've made a lot of changes in those areas of health being one of your main values. Can you touch upon how you live a balanced, purposeful life?
I'm eating a lot better than I used to. I'm working out a lot more than I used to. And I'm reading again. It feels like living a balanced, purposeful life for me is all about my body, my mind, and my activities all kind of being in sync. And
Mhm.
I know who I am now. I know that taking care of myself is way more important to me than anything else. I've done the social thing and I will do it every once in a while, but it's just not my priority. So it feels really nice to be taking care of myself, my body, my mind, and having that confidence in myself, because I think it's science. If you take care of yourself, you'll feel better about yourself, you'll feel more confident. And it all works hand in hand. I I've seen it too many times where people sit there and say, I don't feel confident. And it's because in part that they're not making those decisions and stepping forward and doing what's best for them. And I think that concern for what others think will always be a roadblock in that. So that's really what I'm working hard to continue right now.
Amen. It is
Yeah.
science, right? You take care of yourself, you'll feel better. And I've definitely noticed that you're glowing, you're excited, you're energized, your energy level is very high and very contagious. And one question I'm interested in, because you've talked to a lot of clients or prospective clients for Whole You, have you seen any common denominators or common themes of the people that you've spoken to? You know, what are we all looking for? What are they all looking for? I say we because I believe that we're all one, and even though
Mm.
we might be in different fields, be different ages, have different goals, we actually have a lot of the same goals ultimately. Have you seen or noticed any common trends?
Yeah, I've definitely noticed those key words of I'm feeling lost, I'm feeling confused, I'm not feeling confident, I'm feeling just conflicted. It's just, it seems to be this disconnect between all of, again, what I talked about, the different areas of your life, your health, your mind, your body. It's just, there's a disconnect. And I think that's really the root of why people are why people struggle a lot with how to find that balance. And I just think that it comes from what blew my mind when I first started talking to clients and taking some prospect calls was how any age, any industry, you had this overlap of the, it was the feelings that was the main overlap. And I couldn't, it felt crazy to be able to connect to all these different people. I didn't ever expect to connect with someone who was, in their 50s and working in technology, talking about all of these feelings and saying, I felt the exact same way. So it was really
Mhm.
nice to be able to connect with people through that. And I do enjoy talking to people who come to Whole You seeking that, because as someone who needed that and went through your process, I completely understand. And I don't know, is there anything else that you can think of talking to people, any other keywords or any other?
I love that you said that it was feelings, that people have common feelings, this feeling of being lost, this feeling of being confused. And I think it has a lot to do with what you were saying before in terms of the destination versus the journey. I'm
Mm,
confused because things aren't fitting together. I'm confused because the picture isn't 100% clear. I'm lost because the road is actually crooked when I want it to be straight, and I want it to be easy, but it's hard. And I think I've just found that embracing that ambiguity and embracing the crookedness is truly part of life. As cliche as it is, the positives and negatives are they're all one. And I've noticed people have those feelings of being lost. And what are they ultimately looking for? I've heard this a couple times, that we're all ultimately seeking a couple things, very simple, very basic, that everyone really wants, which is love and joy and freedom and peace.
mm,
And I'll just tell a cute story about London, my daughter, who's 3, and she's in nursery school, and she just brought home an ornament, because they made ornaments in school. And I looked, and it has a little tag on it, and it says, "I wish for love." And I'm just like, so interesting of how this was made. I went to the teacher and I said, what was the activity? And they said, well, we read a book and it was about wishes. And we went around in a circle for all the kids, and people said, I wish for trains, I wish for toys, it's Christmas time or holidays time. People are saying what they wish for. And the first instinctual thing she said was, I wish for love. And I thought it was very, I was like, very
so
profound,
cute. Oh my gosh. Wow. She's
very
she's
profound.
truly her mother's daughter.
Well, I think like that though, we say that we want trains. We don't want trains and trucks anymore. We want the Lamborghini or the mansion or whatever it is.
Right.
We want the baller lifestyle. But ultimately, we really want love. We really want joy, peace, freedom, these things that we're confused about what they're going to look like. I want that car because it's going to give me joy when I'm in that car. And are there different ways? Can we find that joy in our Uber? or in our Honda, and while we're saving up for the bigger car, is there a way to find joy on the way to that bigger thing? Because I don't know, I've never had a Lamborghini, but when we hear, wealthy actors like Jim Carrey or something saying, I wish everybody could be rich and famous, to know that that's not going
Mm,
to solve their problems, and it's not the answer. So I
yeah.
think your observation that the feelings of being lost and confused are just because they're out of alignment with the things that are actually going to give them what they actually want. And
Yeah.
sometimes, and I think that you illustrated it beautifully. I'm going to Japan because I love it. I love the way I feel there. And I'm pursuing this degree in psychology and not film because it's just calling to me now. And I tried it out. I tried out the LA thing and it wasn't a fit. And you said, hey, if I go to Japan and it's not the right thing and I made a mistake, okay, hey, I mean, at least I tried it, and you'll feel it out. And as long as it feels good, you'll stay and just see how it goes, and trust the process of life. I have this little quote next to my bed of like, trust the process of life.
So we talked earlier about, possible book recommendations, and I found this. I think I read this right before I started working with you. I can't really say the title because it is a curse word and I don't want to be age restricted here, but it's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a, so I looked at a quote. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah. So there's there's a section of the book. Again, I read this right before I started working with you because I was out of a job. I'd come back from Japan, my second trip, where I was there for a month in October, and we were going to work together in January. So it was like during the holidays, and I was jobless, and I kind of went to these kinds of books to hopefully learn more about myself. And that, I think this book really jump started the idea of making decisions for myself, and understanding the process. And they talk about this progression. A lot of people think of motivation having to come before action, but Mark Manson writes, the progress, the way that things should progress should be, you take the action, then you get inspired, and then you're motivated. It shouldn't be you're motivated and then you take the action. It's just, it helps people actually stick to things, because I feel like me, and I'm sure a ton of other people, have problems committing to stuff, and to committing to something creative, or committing to a job, or committing to a specific industry. So I think that I love that idea of, here's another quote here: the more you embrace the uncertain and not knowing, the more comfortable you will feel in knowing what you don't know. The more we admit we do not know, the more opportunities we gain to learn. So I think it's nice to say, you know what, sometimes you just got to do, and you got to accept that you don't know, and just be open to learning and growing, because you don't want to be stuck in your own ego and stuck in your own notions of, oh, I know everything I need to know, I don't want to learn anything else. But I think that being accepting of what you don't know is that's really what jump started my journey of self-reflection. And then you came in and really finalized it. So I just wanted to share. This book is great.
The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Beat by Mark Manson.
Yep.
Lovely. And small world, when I went to visit my brother in Peru, which you know well about, we could talk about some other time.
Yeah.
He runs an Airbnb in the Sacred Valley, and I believe that book was in his house. And I feel like it sounded familiar because you had mentioned it before, but I haven't read it, and I will plan to. Thank you for sharing that.
No, of course. It's very, it's a little bit more blunt. It's a little bit more raw, but I think it's always great to read something by someone who is not as careful with his words, or he's just throwing it all out there. Really, you can see the passion in the book, and how he feels so strongly about what he's saying, because he's experienced all of the uncertainties, and he's really overcome it. So it's great to, just like we're talking here and we're talking about my progress as a client and overcoming what I've overcome. I just really think this is a good connector to my own story. So
beautiful. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for sharing, Kelly. Thank you for spending this time with us this morning.
Of course.
And I mean, people who interact with Whole You get the pleasure of interacting with you as well, emailing and talking to you and setting up intention calls and hearing from you throughout the process of their journey as you help to guide them in the overcoming of that uncertainty and getting to a little bit more clarity, a little bit more confidence, and a little bit more connections with resources like you just mentioned, with people, with each other, and ultimately with projects and careers that they find fulfilling and meaningful. So thank you again, Callie.
Yeah, of course. I can't wait for the next one and to keep this going. It's going to be fun. I'm really
Yes,
excited.
me too. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, peace.
Bye.
Out.